You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. I'm really delighted to be in conversation with Dr. Maya Rockeymoore Cummings. We're talking about her new book, RAGEISM, which I'm calling essential reading. We're so glad to have you here. Let's start with the word itself, RAGEISM. You coined it. Tell us, what did you first know? When did you first know that word needed to exist? And what moment in your work made you say, we don't have language for this yet?
So I actually signed my book contract back in 2019. And as I dug into the research and began to really dig deep into, the whole notion of intersectionality and, the work on racism from an academic perspective, I realized that there were several terms that were missing, not just, a concept for, what happens when policymakers deliberately use the tools of government in order to undermine the thriving of disfavored populations, in this case, Black and Brown populations. But also the notion of what is it that we still have this white supremacist directive that lasts, is persistent over centuries. It's almost like, did somebody 3 centuries ago come and whisper in Donald Trump's ear, in the afterlife somehow? But the reality is that there's what I call a white root directive, something that underlies the white experience of supremacy that actually compels them to follow a priority of us first. In the European context, but also here in the United States. So rageism is the combination of racism and ageism. And in this concept, racism still carries this meaning. It's anti-Black and Brown, sentiment. But I redefine ageism to mean when racism is at play, ageism is from pre-birth all the way to death and across generations, meaning that white supremacist culture does not want to see the thriving of Black and Brown communities at any stage of their life, not just in older age, at any stage. And that is why we see, unfortunate disparities in terms of the death of Black babies. I think we see unfortunate disparities in terms of their thriving at a very young age. We see disparities in terms of their schooling and education. We see the disparities, they last all the course of a lifetime. We've gotten used to talking about them in narrow tranches, pre-K through 6, K through 12, college, workforce. But the reality is it's over the lifetime. So this is life cycle discrimination that operates as ageism against the lived experiences of Black and Brown people over the course of a life.
I mean, long before I returned to journalism, this, I'd spent some time doing quite a bit of advocacy work for young people, addressing some of the root causes of childhood obesity, but also advocacy work related to seniors. And so, over the course of my career, I know that, I certainly have seen, what you're describing, across the age spectrum. And one of my big takeaways, because of the work that had a chance to be a part of, is that longevity is really a justice issue. I think we so often think about longevity as, well, if you could just, get in 2 to 3, days of yoga a week and drink your green juice and, lay off the, red meat, then maybe you can live to 100. And, that is not even the tip of the iceberg. Would you agree that longevity is a justice issue?
It's absolutely a justice issue. It's absolutely 100% shaped by public policy. So, we can, go all kinds of directions on this, but I'll just take you through this little exercise. We still have in this country segregation. It's, by class supposedly nowadays, but, as you well know, race and class overlap so dramatically, particularly in urban areas, that it's hard to distinguish. But when you go to, born in certain neighborhoods and attend certain schools, you get, you don't have access to the amenities in your neighborhood that support your health and thriving. the least of which is fresh fruits and vegetables and the opportunities for safe places to play, et cetera. But the most damning of which is you're segregated into school systems that are underperforming and have all kinds of issues and problems. Then you get to, hopefully you make it to high school, but maybe you don't make it to high school, which means that you've gone off into the prison system somewhere, which absolutely undermines your health and well-being. But say you make it to high school graduation, which is a wonderful thing. But then you're unemployable in the sense of getting a job that actually has white collar health benefits. And so you are segregated into job experiences that don't come with the full benefits that support your health and thriving. And then that carries over into, and you're living in a community where you're saturated with fast food restaurants and things that undermine your health and thriving. And so literally you're segregated into a deliberate system of that erodes your health and causes you to be sicker over a lifetime and to actually die younger. And so that is by design. It's all influenced by policy. And so, to the extent that people say, well, it's income-based, it's not race-based, the fact of the matter is that, it's both. And so with that, we have to realize that that is why public policy is so important. And that is why I am always pointing to policy doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's created by people, policymakers. And so we absolutely have to take that as our highest responsibility, which is voting the right people into office of any race or ethnicity anywhere across the country. You got to get the right people because, if you don't, then we're doing terrible because they prioritize other things.
And a little bit later, we're going to talk about your Empower acronym. I was watching your social media earlier, and I was so taken by it. And so we'll get to that in a little bit. But your book, it draws heavily on case studies, Flint water crisis, COVID-19, the housing collapse, Social Security privatization. For our leaders, learners, and listeners who may not have connected those dots, what is the through line, and what do Flint and Social Security have to do with each other?
So what you have is policymakers trying to make decisions or making decisions at every point in the process of each of these situations where the choices undermine the thriving of Black and Brown communities. Now, it didn't get to happen with Social Security because we were able to stop it. But the Social Security reform effort that the Republicans sought to privatize the system back in the early 2000s was absolutely racist and sexist in terms of its conceptualization. They pointed to Black men being being the bellwether, persona, so to speak, of why we needed to privatize the system by saying that Black men get shortchanged by Social Security. But the fact of the matter is it's not because of the Social Security system. It's because of the racism all around the country that, takes them out at earlier ages because of, everything we've already just talked about, including policing, where, unfortunately, issues of police-involved shootings are increasingly a public health threat and continue to be. And so, if they would have gotten away with it, what we would have ended up on the Social Security reform issue is Black and Brown people and women subsidizing the retirement income of upper class white men who are, longer lived, who, have higher earnings. But the fact of the matter is that because we have shorter life expectancies, because we get sicker earlier, the fact of the matter is that we unfortunately don't get the full breadth of the Social Security benefits that we've earned. And when we die off early, that money goes to, other things. So there's that. But then you go to the Flint water crisis and you have a situation where the white governor of a state makes a decision to take away the democratic rights of an entire city, predominantly Black and Brown, by installing an emergency manager. And that emergency manager makes the decision to change water sources without, making consultation, but ignoring the consultation of experts and then poisoning an entire city. And what the case study in my book shows is how, the entire time the Snyder administration actually knew. They were covering up their tracks, and they were, basically trying to hide behind the fact that they had made the wrong decision. They made a decision that they would not have made for their families, because they had no concept of viewing the Black and brown, primarily Black and brown citizens of Flint as human beings deserving of rights and care and, support. And so it's basically they dispossessed the Flint folks, and that was shown throughout that case. And then, of course, I've got, I talk about Baltimore, I talk about COVID, where we see the Trump administration cutting people off or trying to cut people off from access to healthcare in the middle, in the middle of a pandemic, where access to healthcare is critical. So, all of these decisions are not, they're in the context of, unfortunately, a continuation of white supremacist ideology influencing our politics here in the United States.
Yeah, you were married to Congressman Elijah Cummings, one of the great moral voices of his generation. You wrote the final chapter of his memoir. When we come forward, I want to ask you how much of this book is a conversation with him, with his legacy, with his fight. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Dr. Maya Rockeymoore Cummings, the author of the new book, RAGEISM, Run, Don't Walk to Go Get It. More when we come forward. Are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We are live in afternoon drive time with Dr. Maya Rockeymoore Cummings. She is the author of RAGEISM, which is available wherever books are sold right now. Right before the break, I was asking you about how much of this book is a conversation with your late husband, Congressman Elijah Cummings. How much of this book is a conversation with him, with his legacy, with this fight?
Yeah, so, I think that a lot of it is to the extent of, for example, Flint. I start my case study off with his story because he led the fight on Capitol Hill to make sure that the people of Flint actually got a fair treatment from the Snyder administration and were connected to the right federal resources, he and Maxine Waters. And so he had, a perch as the chair of the House Government Oversight Committee at that time, which gave him the power to basically call all kinds of politicians and businessmen before the U.S. Congress. He called Governor Snyder before the U.S. Congress and basically asked him to resign because of his poor treatment of the people of Flint. And so, I admittedly make sure that I give my late husband credit where credit is due. In my forward, I talk about a situation where, we read a story in the Washington Post about a young African-American male, 12 years old, who died of a tooth abscess. He had a cavity where it got infected and the bacteria went to his brain and killed him. And, we were both upset. But Elijah, of course, had the power to go and work with other policymakers, with the dental associations, with state legislators, et cetera, to basically turn the situation around in Maryland, where we had a unfortunate situation where the Medicaid reimbursements were so low, and this young African-American male was very low income, that they weren't treating, unfortunately, they were not treating low-income people for dental issues. And that is why he fell through the cracks. And so they turned the situation around where they were able to actually make Maryland make Maryland number one in the country in terms of how they respond to reimbursements for Medicaid for dental care, and how to get dentists involved in making sure that they care for low-income children. So, there are several situations where I point to his work because I think that they are exemplars of what policymakers are supposed to be doing, working on behalf of their constituents and people who are dispossessed. At the same time, I've got to say, Nii-Quartelai, I don't know what you want to be called.
You can call me Nii-Quartelai. We've known each other a long time.
That I was not, a babe in swaddling clothes when Elijah and I met. I mean, I was, a PhD candidate working on Capitol Hill already with a history of my own and certainly scholarship under my belt on many of these issues dealing with health, economic security, and education. And so, I would say both our marriage and this book are representative of the merging of our beliefs about what this country needs to be, where it falls short, and what we need to do about it.
I want to bring us to this moment because, as I mentioned at the top of the show, today the Supreme Court handed down 3 rulings: birthright citizenship upheld, trans women banned in female sports, political spending limits struck down. When you look at this court through the lens of rageism, what do you see?
I see rageism. So people practicing using this is policymakers, and these judicial justices, judges are policymakers, basically using their tools. In this case, it's the law and decisions made around the law particularly in the case of the campaign financing decision, because we've got to discuss this, because the top 1% of America combined with the wealthiest corporations in America basically have more wealth than the entire rest of the country. And that means that a decision of this nature, where they basically open the floodgates to money, means that the rest of us have no chance to have a fair hearing in this system. They're giving superpowers to the wealthy 1%, the billionaires, the wealthy corporations, that regular American citizens don't have, because we do not have that wealth. And so, I think our Supreme Court needs to be reformed. I do believe that it either needs to be expanded or, we need to give term limits, or all of the above. But currently what we have is a Supreme Court that I believe has been co-opted by private special interests, moneyed interests. And they are willing to do the bidding of this administration, because I believe that they are another arm of the political forces that actually animate the Republican Party.
You offer something in this book that a lot of policy books don't. And you call it liberation democracy and liberation policy. And it's not just a diagnosis, it's actually a prescription. What does that look like in practice? For the legislators that are listening right now and other policymakers listening right now, what do you want them to do, Monday morning after, the July 4th weekend? What do you want them to roll up their sleeves and get to work doing?
The details of policies matter. And, we've got, the way our system works, and which is okay. We've got all kinds of people with all kinds of backgrounds who become legislators, and that's fine. But when you have that responsibility and you assume the role, you've got to make sure that the devil in the details speaks to equity, that you are designing policies that support the full thriving of all populations, but particularly those who are vulnerable, those who have been, historically marginalized, those who show disparities. We need to make sure that our policies are designed in ways that close gaps and make all of our communities stronger, so that we can, grow together and thrive together and have a strong society. We do not need to be entertaining the kinds of policymakers who come to Washington or state legislatures to basically use the tools of policymaking in order to deliberately destroy the chances of communities that they don't care for. And so there's a huge responsibility when you take on the role of a policymaker, not just of a legislator, as a judge, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I want them to get serious about policymaking. And so, I've got a website, RAGEISM.com, where there will be, we've got courses in the making that, dig deep into, aspects of this, and including liberation policymaking. That we'll be happy to, provide to people who are interested. If you want to read the book, read the book. Chapter 9 is all about liberation policy. We can't hide from the data. The data speaks clearly. We need to make sure that we're building policies that work for people. And people cannot be defined as some people, cannot be defined as just wealthy people. People, all people, Black, brown, purple, and otherwise.
That's right. That's right. Well, you're not alone in really supporting that call to action. Hillary Clinton called your book "The Bold Call to Action We Urgently Need." Kevin Powell said it carries the boldness of James Baldwin, the intelligence of bell hooks, and the drum beats of Kendrick Lamar. That's pretty extraordinary company. Talk to us about what you want the ordinary reader, someone who is driving home from work right now. What do you want them to feel or better understand when they finish this book?
I want them to understand the moment we are in this country. The Trump administration is a part of a larger political project where the folks in charge who think they're in charge of this country have sought to have a racial reset. They've sought to police gender roles. They've sought to set back women's rights. They have sought to, undermine LGBTQ rights. They definitely have an agenda to dispossess and incarcerate and kick out immigrants. But it's all a part of a larger agenda. And that agenda is to ensure the dominance of white men in this country as the unquestioned authority that are deserving to determine the direction of this country without the input of anyone else they define as undeserving. And their project is well financed, and they have been pushing it heavily through the courts, through the Congress, through the state legislatures. And so, and unfortunately, I don't think that those who are opposed to this agenda have launched sufficient defense and counteroffense in order to fight it. And so I want them to know that there is a book out there that diagnoses what's happening and why it's happening, but then provides a blueprint for how we fight back and what we get to afterwards, meaning that I don't think that we need the same country that we think that we had before Trump. I think we need something better. And I call that something better liberation democracy. We're in a situation where, they have, they're trying to, of course, they've neutralized the courts in terms of DEI and racial discrimination. They're using dialectical deception to, claim merit and demerit. If it's Black and brown, it's a DEI hire. If it's Black and brown, then it's not meritorious. But if it's white and male, it's right. And that is absolutely incorrect. We need to celebrate the fact that we are a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy that has a very diverse population. And we need to leverage the talents and the contributions of all of our community members, not just some. And so their playbook is as old as the country. They pulled this playbook out after slavery. They practiced this playbook during most of the early part of the 20th century. They pulled it out again after the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And now they're going for coup de grace? And that is, destroy affirmative action, destroy voting rights, destroy DEI, destroy immigration rules and immigrants, get all of the rest of these people that we do not approve of, in order so that we can maintain our rightful place as defenders of the universe and certainly as, the God complex figures of this country. And I think that there's a better way.
Yeah.
We deserve the right to actually have a bridge to a multicultural future where everybody has the opportunity to thrive, to be leaders, to set the direction of this country. And so I think that that is the opposite vision. And it's a vision that we need to embrace because we own this country just as much as they do. In fact, I would say more so because my folks were here long before Donald Trump's folks were.
You better clock it, Maya.
Bam.
You better clock it.
I mean, some of these folks think that they're blood and soil. If they want to really go back, we can go back because we've done our history. And so, don't tell me, that when your daddy got here in the late 1800s, that my folks weren't already here, because they were. And if you're going to make that the defining point by which we determine who gets to rule as the supreme, beings in this country, just put that to the side, please, because a lot of us have done our homework and can counter.
That's right. And for folks out there that are looking for a good read, an inspiring read that can help you to get rooted and to begin to practice some radical imagination, even in the face of the bewilderment that sometimes overwhelms us with the news headlines, then you definitely want to check out this book, Dr. Maya Rockeymoore Cummings. This book is a gift. RAGEISM, Racism, Ageism, and the Quest for Liberation Democracy. Get it, read it, give it to everyone you love. Dr. Cummings, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your work and your witness, and for being here with us in Afternoon Drive Time on A More Perfect Union.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. Take care.
All right. Take care. We're listening to A More Perfect Union more when we come forward.